Well, hello everybody, and welcome once again. My name is Alan Shisco. I am a motion graphics artist, and this is the next installment of my How to Do Motion Graphics blog. So today we're going to be looking at a project that I was working on for a client, and presumably you've already seen the QuickTime from the actual site. There's a link there on my blog that you can click, and you can take a look at a QuickTime or a Windows Media file. And this particular one was looked to be a fairly simple little project. You start off with your camera and you kind of swoop in, and it's a scene of somebody who had was getting ready to move. And the idea behind this project is that we wanted to convince people that before they move, they should call to make sure that they get all of their home phone and their internet and everything moved over in good time. So I was actually working from, originally the campaign was a still. We'll take a look at it here. This is a poster that they made up, and this is what they set up. And they said, okay, we want to do this, except we want it to be a 30-second commercial, and we want it all to move. All right. So this is actually a pretty unusual project for me personally, because a lot of the motion graphics that I do are quite illustrative, I guess. A lot of flying boxes and that kind of thing. And not a whole lot of photorealism. So this was a bit of a challenge for me, and I set to it. So let's go to After Effects. I'm just going to minimize this window with the tilde key and close that so that we can get rid of it. See you later. All right. So here's the After Effects project right here. I'm currently at frame 0. I've got this one layer right down at the very bottom here soloed. This is the actual raw renders from the 3D application. What I'm going to do here is I'm not going to actually give you step-by-step things on how to do all this stuff. I'm assuming that you know a little bit about motion graphics and a little bit about 3D, and I'm just going to give you a basic overview of how I went through stuff and the problems that I came upon when I was doing the projects and how I hopefully fixed them. So this is the raw renders that we looked at here, that we're looking at right here. So you can see it's pretty flat looking. Sort of the shadows aren't quite right. Looks very computer generated. Let's go over to the 3D application and we'll see what the project looks like. So if we take a look at it here, I'll just do a quick little render. And this was rendered just with an Omni light, flat, no shadows and everything. I just wanted to get a look at what all the materials and everything look like in the boxes. Now, a lot of these boxes that we've got here and the walls and stuff, I didn't actually model myself. It was a pretty tight schedule that we had for this, and it was a lot faster for me to just go and buy the models. So I went to a place called TurboSquid. And you can do a search here, and they've got a whole bunch of models, a lot of which are free, a lot of which are for pay. But even the for pay ones are quite reasonably priced, I thought. So I used a lot of their models here. Some of the boxes, I made some of the boxes. The chairs I got from there, those were actually free, as was this one. So that's where I started from here. So what we wanted to try and do was we wanted to try and get it to look as photorealistic as possible, but the trouble was that I was not going to be able to do it rendering with what's called radiosity. Now, radiosity is a physical thing that 3D applications use to accurately say where light's coming from, and you get all the proper bounces and everything. And I could have set up, you know, proper wall sconce lighting here and all this kind of stuff, and it would have looked like an actual architectural drawing. Because I didn't have too much time to pull this off, I decided that I was not going to go with the radiosity lighting, but I was going to search for some other different ways to get a look that would be satisfactory. So the first thing that I did was I tried creating a skylight. Skylight, and there is no roof on our scene right here. So when I did the skylight, we came up with some really nice shadows, and it sort of looked kind of fake. It looked like there was a great big, well, it looked like there was no roof on the house. So that was okay, but the big problem with that is that it took 20 minutes per frame to render. After doing a little bit of research and looking into it, in 3D Studio, part of the rendering options is that you can use something in the advanced lighting called, let me just actually bring it up here. Whoops, sorry about that. That, go over here. There we go. Advanced lighting, light tracer. Now, if you're using a skylight, often if you use light tracer and make it active, of course, it can speed things up considerably, and you still get pretty good results. I did get that. I managed to reduce the render times from 20 minutes down to about 2 or 3 minutes per frame. But that was still quite a long time, and I wasn't really happy with the quality of the renders that I was getting. So then I came upon, somebody suggested, well, why don't you take a look at a script for Macs called eLight. That's what I did. I looked it up, and I've got a little link here. Where are we here? Basically what it is it's fake radiosity. And I'll show you how it's going to work. You can download it from this site right here. Click on Mac Scripts, and you can get it. Go back to 3D here. And the idea is that what you want to do is you want to create a dome of Omni lights or spotlights and put this whole dome of lights over your scene. You want them to cast shadows, and you want to, then when you render it, you get what's called, what they call fakeosity. It's a fake radiosity scene. And I'll quickly show you how it works here. So let's just close that up. You go up to your Mac script, run script, and I'm going to choose eLight. And here's the options that you get right here when you run it. Now I'm going to do 5,000 here. I'm going to change the multiplier to 4. Multiplier is the strength of all the lights that you're going to be using. And map size, I'm going to change to 1024, and sample range 15. These ones here affect the quality of the shadows, how soft they are, how accurate they are. So once you've done all that, you can click on the Create Environment Light button, and let's take a look at what happens. We got a whole bunch of lights that get created here. I'm just going to go here and zoom out, and you can see that we've got this big dome of lights now that's circling, and they're all centered in on our scene right here. So what I'm going to do here is select the Omni lights that I was using. You can see all the lights there. There are 91 of them. I'm going to select the temporary Omni light that I had. I'm going to turn that off. And then I'm going to do another quick render of the scene. You can see what initially it looked like. You can see that as the lights are getting prepared, it's calculating all the shadows. It only does this once, and then we're going to be getting the render. Now remember, when I first started this out, I was getting 20 minutes per frame using the skylight. And now you can see it's coming through pretty quick. Nice soft shadows there, getting some shadows underneath all the boxes. And the scene looks a lot more natural. Not perfect, but pretty good. So this was the starting point that I embarked upon with the 3D side of things. I won't go through how I set it all up. I went through and animated the camera flies through, and all that kind of thing. So back to After Effects. The first thing that I wanted to do, I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit. Basically what I'm going to do from here on is I'm going to show you how I took this raw footage and how I made it, added things to it, and tried to make it look a little bit more realistic with the goal that I wanted to get it as photorealistic as I could get. So first thing I looked at was this tape roll that I had here. Looks really not right. It looks plastered on there, and I needed to get a little bit more shadow. So what I did was I did a render of just, let's see if I can just turn that on. Yeah, we won't be able to see that. There we go. I did a render of just the tape roll, and then I applied a drop shadow to that. If I can turn that on. There we go, drop shadow effect. And that just gave it a bit more of a punchy sort of a look to it. You can see as I turn that off and on, it looks a little bit better. So that was a little thing. And you'll notice as I go through this, a lot of the things I did seem very little and seem like, wow, that's really getting in pretty close to doing stuff. And I was trying to, playing with all the little stuff because I wanted it to look as real as possible within the scope of our budget and our time frame. So the next thing that I did was I looked at it and I thought, okay, this is good, but it's the shadows. The shadows just are not right. Now this was a particularly tricky little thing that I had to do because especially down here, you can see that there are no shadows just around the bottom of these wire things right here. And if we were to go in closer to the boxes, you'd see that the shadows they're not really punchy. They don't set that up, don't set off the scene very well. So what I did was, we'll just turn that on. If I turn on the floor shadows and floor shadows there, they're both just different instances of the same thing. You can see now I've got some little shadows there. I'm going to show you how I did this. So I'm going to open up this scene. What I did was zoom out quite a ways, I'm just going to show the alpha channel only. What I did is I went into 3D Studio and I rendered just a top-down view of the entire scene. I applied white materials to all of the objects that were in the scene, right here, here, and here. Let's just zoom in a little bit on that. This is the crates that we saw in the scene. These are the boxes. This is the couch, and this is the plant. And then over here, if I turn off these, you can see that I have, these are the modern chairs. Now what I did was, I put little masks around these chairs and set those masks so that they, let me just turn off this blur layer. I put a blur on all that. There we go. And I set the mask just so that I have little section of where the light, where the bottoms of those chairs would be here. Now I'll turn that on. I gave it a bit of a blur as well because I want it to be not a really hard shadow, just a soft one. Now the reason that I masked it is because I only wanted the shadow in these chairs just around the bottom corner of those wires on the chairs. So I'll turn that on. Turn that. Did I get everything all set up here? Yes. Okay. So we're back to where we were. So that's how I did the shadows. Now when we go back here, that'll render again. And you can see if I do just a capture right there, and that's before and after. So you can also see up here, when I did that, I also added a little bit more blur, a little bit more punchiness to the shadows on the bottom of the boxes. So that was okay. Now the boxes are sort of looking a little bit better, or the shadows, I should say. So what did we do here next? Yes, so what we discovered after I rendered it, the first time I rendered it through, you can't really see it right here. Just dimly you can see there's a little red thing. And that ended up being the model that I got for the tape roll had the 3M logo on it. And of course, we didn't want to play around with somebody else's logo, so I had to re-render it again without a 3M logo on it. So that was that one. All right. So next thing I started doing was I started adding text. The idea was that we wanted to look like there was text that was written on these boxes as if you were going to be moving and you wanted to, put a great big stamp on there to say where it was going. Remember when we were looking at the still that I was working from, they had great big blocky letters there explaining save the money and move your home phone and all that kind of stuff. So let's turn on this first one here. Now, let's just go to the pre-comp here. I'll turn that on and I'll show you what this is all about. Basically what I did is I got a text layer. I'll just solo this. Turn on just alpha channel so we can see. And I just did a real simple text animation where it scales and opacitizes. Is that a word? Opacitizes on. The next thing I did is let's see, where are we here? Turn that off. I just put these two layers down here to act as guide layers because I knew that this one is going to be going in a box this size. So I use this yellow solid here just so that I know where to position my text and everything like that. Then what I did is I just got this is just a shot. Let's just turn that on. No, we won't be able to see that. Just a texture that I shot with my digital camera. And what I did is I applied that. If we go to transfer modes, I put Stencil Luma on that so that all the grunginess that I had here was cutting through onto the text down here and just making it look more like a stamp type thing. So that's what I did for that. And then the adjustment layer, I put a little bit of blur on everything and also applied a little bit of roughen edges, which roughens up the edges of the text. So very subtle in that case as well. And once I did all that, we ended up with let's just zoom in a little bit closer. You can see it sort of looks like a rough kind of a stamp right there with a bit of some rough edges, a little bit of grunginess. And that just kind of made it a little bit rougher just to make it a little bit more real. So I did that for a whole bunch of text layers. I'll turn the other one down here on, save $320. And let's see, we'll go on. I'll turn on these other text layers here. They're all essentially the same kind of thing. Now, the important thing about the text layers is how did I get them plastered onto these boxes? Just so. So let's go over to 3D Land and see what I did there. Back to 3D Studio Max. What I've got here is I'm using in my scene a plugin for Max called Max to AE. It's a plugin by a company named Boomer Labs. Right here. boomerlabs.com, and what it does is it allows you to export camera data from Max, bring it into After Effects, and you can also export layers and also light data. So the first thing that I did is created what's called a helper layer. So this helper layer is just 720 by 486, the same size as the composition that I'm doing. I'm working in NTSC right here. And what you do is you just click on Export Layer. A dialog box opens up. And you tell it do all the settings and everything, whether you want to move over the position, the orientation, the scale of the layer, start and end frames and all that kind of stuff, and your pixel sizes and all that kind of deal. Then you send it to your clipboard and go over to now I was using After Effects 6.5 to move everything over. There were issues with regards to going to After Effects 7 with the copy pasting, but I would do it in 6.5, and then I save the project file, and then I import that into After Effects. So basically the idea is that you create a solid here, make it comp size, turn it into a 3D layer, and then you paste. And you'll get all these keyframes here. And what it does is it positions everything so that it's exactly where this layer was in Max space. It's now in After Effects 3D space. So the idea here, what you want to do is you want to align it to whatever it is that you want to plaster it on. In this case, the wooden box that's in my scene, I wanted to have some text that was on the very front of that. So I just used the Align tool and positioned it so that it was right in the front there. I could just as easily position it in front of the cardboard boxes that I have here, and so on. And then what I end up with is this scene where if I click and drag through it, there's our camera move, and each one of these solids that I've got represent like the top of the crates, the top of the cardboard boxes, another cardboard box, and so I've got all these layers that are perfectly positioned in After Effects 3D space, so that when I go to put all my text on here, these are just pre-comps that I've used, and those pre-comps are plastered perfectly onto these boxes. So really, really handy little plugin, the Boomer Labs Max to AE. I probably couldn't even have done this project without it. I could have done RPF files, but I find that generally that's generally not accurate enough for my needs. So very nice plugin. So let's see here. We will go. One of the interesting things about this particular thing, this one right here, let's go to, is this personal TV. Is when I originally put it on there, of course, it was because it's these boxes are not in After Effects 3D space. Of course, it was sitting in front of the background here. So what I had to do was I had to render out. Let's just turn that on. It's like that. I had to render out the scene with this front box just as plain black material and then white all around. And then, actually I'll turn that on. I applied if we zoom in here, a Lumamat to it, to the front box. So let me just turn that on here. Oops, not to that one. There we go, to the PTV layer. There we go. Now Lumamat, it'll make it disappear as long as you've got a nice render of the front box. I actually rendered out a lot of these black and white versions of things. As I go up, I'll show you a few more. They're really handy because it really lets you zero in on certain aspects of things if you want to add some more shadows or take them away or some such thing. So anyway, continuing on. So we had, let's see, internet. Yeah, we'll turn that on. So we had a whole bunch more text layers that I'll turn on here, where they'll be popping up in a second. There's another one. And we'll move along our composition a little bit more. And there we go. We're starting to get all these text layers that pour onto the surface. Then the camera moves around and does a quick little loop over this cardboard box that we see here. And again, same thing. I'll turn this layer on. Soloing that. And there we can see the text here. You can see there's a little bit of motion blur. I applied motion blur to the text in the pre-comp and also here, so that when you turn motion blur off or on, you get a little bit more of a realistic sort of a look. Generally, when I work in NTSC, I render most of my stuff to frames, and I'll apply motion blur if motion blur is needed. I generally avoid going to fields just because there are so many different options with regards to upper field first and lower field first. And if people have to scale something, then it gets all it just brings on more confusion than I like. So I generally just stick with frames when I do my work. So we'll turn on all those text layers there, and now we start getting into a little bit more of the interesting problems that I had. So one of the things that I was looking at when I looked at this is I decided that I was going to have nothing out of these windows here. I could have probably set up an outdoor scene out there and got some trees in there and got all that kind of thing, maybe some people walking by or something like that. But that would have been a lot of extra work, and in the tests that I did, I wasn't happy with how it was turning out. So what I decided is that I would instead have it just blown out, like as if with the camera that it was really, really overexposed. And that's actually how the still looks. That I was originally supplied with and told to make it look like this. You couldn't see anything outside; it was really blown out. So what I did was I will just turn this on, and let me just what would be the best way to show this? I'm just going to maximize the thing here. Yeah, going to turn off the solo for all these layers here, and you can see if I turn off the blur effect that I've got here, all I have is a scene of just the windows. So when I turned that layer on, there we go, you can see that, I'll just turn that off, it just adds a little bit of a glow, just like that, around the edges of the windows. So I liked how that worked. I'll put a bit of a fast blur on that. Needed to have that right there. There you go. I really liked how that looked. It sort of made it look a lot more natural, a little more photorealistic. Now the next thing that I wanted to do, and I debated when I was rendering it whether I should have sunlight coming in through the window and hitting the boxes and the floor and dappling all over the place. I decided that I would not, let me just turn all these off right now. I decided that I would not do that in the original render because then I wouldn't have any control over how I wanted the dapples to look in terms of their strength and their intensity. So let's go over to the 3D here and take a look at the project that I made. We'll just not save that, and we'll go to light dapples. And if we take a look at this scene, I'm going to render this now, the first frame, as soon as we're coming up here. And you can see I've got a light positioned outside of the window, and when I rendered it, all the materials, all the objects that I had here were just gray materials that would accept the light, and I end up with just a grayscale image of where the light fell onto the scene. Now the great thing about that is, when I've got that and I turn this on, my dapple, turn on our, keep that off. When I've got my dapple, we'll zoom in here a little bit. All I have to do is put the add transfer mode on it. If we put this to normal, we'll see what it looks like. And I'll also pump up the opacity to 100. This is the render that I did, remember. If I put this to add, that's really, really blown out right now. So all I did was just change the opacity, dragged it down until I got just the amount of dappling that I wanted. Now this was really great to do in After Effects because if the client came back and said, yeah, it looks good, but the dappling you've got there is too much, I don't have to go back and re-render the whole thing. All I got to do is move it down or move it up. So that was a really handy little thing to do there. So the next thing that I approached is that I looked at this, and like I was saying earlier, it looks like basically there's no roof on this room here. And well, there isn't a roof on this room. It was all lit from above using the Omnilight domes. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give it just a little bit more of a look to try and make it seem like there is a roof up there somewhere. And the way that I chose to do that was I wanted to darken up the top of the image here. So what I did was I just created a black ramp. There we go. We'll just turn that on. I put the multiply mode on it, transfer mode. And if we go to our ramps, let's see, I'm going to have to bring up, there we go. You can see that the start of the ramp is right up there, and the bottom of the ramp, which is white, is right there. So now when I apply that, It sort of looks now a little bit more like there might be a roof up there. It just kind of darkens the top of the image a little bit. So arguably that worked okay. I was happy enough with it, and the client was happy enough that we decided to go with it. So. The next thing I decided to do is I wanted to create some volumetric light. Now, volumetric light means that if there was a little bit of dust in this room in reality and there was sunlight shining in, you'd get a little bit of light bouncing off of it, and you'd be getting some light shining in there. Now, initially when I decided to do that, I tried doing it with Trapcode Shine. I'll turn this on just so you can see what it looks like. I'll just do a capture there. Turn that off, and you can see you get some nice light rays that are coming in right here. And that was okay. It worked pretty good, but as the camera was moving around, I was having trouble lining up the shine by animating the source point and getting it to look like it was properly coming in. So what I decided to do is I went back to 3D Land here, and using the same lights that I used for my dapples down here, I changed it into a volumetric light. And we'll turn that on, and there you go. Now if I solo this one, you can see, bring the opacity up to 100 there, you can see that as we go through, we're getting the actual 3D volume of the light in the scene. So all I had to do again, as with the dapples, is change it to the add mode, change the opacity, I think it was down around 40% or so. And then we get some really nice volumetric light in the scene. And again, I can control how much I want by turning it up or down. That was another reason that I didn't want to put the volumetric light in the original scene, so that I could play around with it and make sure that I had control of that volume over the course of the animation. So the next thing I did is I've got an adjustment layer, and I put broadcast colors on there. I often do that just to make sure I don't have any illegal colors, so that when it goes off to air, it doesn't come back. And the other plugin or effect that I have is I wanted to add a little bit of grain to it, just to gunge it up and make it a little bit more real. It's a very, very subtle application of grain to it, just to make it look not quite so flat, not quite so 3D created. The rest of the project here is just right at the very end. If I turn all this on, turn that off there. Just the final page about how to get in touch with them and everything, and that's the project. So I'm going to go back to here and do a little capture of the scene right there, and then I'm going to turn on what it originally looked like. Oops, maximize that window, zoom in, and we'll take a look at before and after. So one can certainly argue if it was successful or not in terms of making it look photorealistic. To me, it doesn't look absolutely perfect. We were very happy with it. The client was very happy with it. Given a little bit more time and a little bit more rendering time, I would have gone with Radiosity, and then I would have had even a better sort of a look to the whole thing. But all in all, I was very happy with how it turned out. My name again is Alan Szyszko. I'm a motion graphics artist. And hope everybody enjoyed this little demo on how I did the project.